Hey everybody, welcome back to Investing with Wesley. Today I want to talk to you all about what the difference is between an asset and a liability and how you can make any liability an asset. Let's get into it. So let's start with the basics. What is an asset and what is a liability? An asset is anything that appreciates in value that produces a positive cash return. If you watched my previous video on the difference between a good debt and a bad debt, you'll know that your primary mortgage is considered a bad debt. And in the same aspect, it's also considered a liability. And yes, it does appreciate over time, but you have to pay the interest and the principal and the loan. Therefore, it's a liability that hurts your bottom line and not necessarily an asset. A liability is anything that you're held liable to pay. Now, in a general sense, a liability is anything that doesn't produce a positive return, anything that costs money out of your bottom line to own or to have. These are things like a brand new car or maybe buying a new phone. These are things that you have to pay for out of pocket and no one else pays for. But in a broader sense of the word liability, a liability is also any debt. It's anything that you're held liable to pay back. So you could have a rental property be an asset and a liability because you're liable to pay back the loan that you took on the house. But it's also an asset because if you have a renter in there paying you monthly rent that's generating you cash flow positive, that's paying for the mortgage that you're liable to pay for. But it's also an asset because the property is appreciating and it's not costing you any money out of pocket because the renter is paying for the mortgage. Now, the most common types of liabilities are simple luxuries. These are things like a brand new car, a new phone, that new TV or mini fridge for your man cave. It doesn't necessarily mean taking on debt because you could buy a new TV complete cash. But it is a liability because that is just you spending money and it's not producing anything in return. But liabilities also go as far as a rental property that goes vacant for more than a month can also turn into a liability because as long as that property is vacant, you're not producing any sort of income. So it costs you out of pocket to pay for the liabilities that you still have on that property. So let's talk about how to convert a liability into an asset. How do we make your brand new car produce money for you? How do we make your TV or your new phone or even your primary mortgage go from a liability to an asset? Because I can tell you this, anything can be an asset and anything could be a liability. It all depends on how you use whatever item you just purchased. Now, pretty much any car can be turned into an asset with a simple app of Lyft or Uber. Now, at the surface level, it's really easy to hop in an Uber some people around, or Uber Eats some things to make money using your own car. But that's surface level. You also have to factor in the wear and tear on your car, all the oil changes, new tires, brakes, everything that comes with that car, and the maintenance. You have to make sure you're Ubering enough to pay for the car that you bought that you're trying to turn into an asset, but also to pay for all the extra maintenance you're going to need on it. If you could Uber or Lyft or DoorDash, whatever you're doing, if you could do it enough to make enough money to pay for all those things, then your car has just turned from a liability into an asset because it's paying for itself. Now, how to turn a vacant property liability back into an asset is as simple as finding a tenant. If you have a rental property that goes vacant and you're afraid of the liability that you still owe with no money being produced from that property, it's as simple as finding a tenant. There's a big issue right now with a lot of renters being very skeptical on who they allow to rent their properties, especially with the coronavirus pandemic happening, where a lot of people aren't allowed to be evicted. Landlords are afraid to rent to new people in fear that they won't pay their rent and there's nothing they can do about it to evict them due to emergency orders. If you're one of these landlords that are absolutely terrified on taking on new tenants, it's as simple as opening up that property as an Airbnb. Airbnb rentals have to be paid up front, and typically, if done right, can make you more monthly income than a standard lease. Same thing with your primary mortgage. If you're living in your house by yourself and you want to turn that liability into an asset, it's as simple as renting out your spare bedrooms or Airbnb-ing those spare bedrooms. Take me as an example. I have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. One of my bedrooms is my home office, another bedroom is my bedroom, and our spare bedroom, when we don't have guests, we Airbnb it on the side. Now, my monthly mortgage is $1,100, and renting it out on Airbnb for the full month gives us $1,500. Now, I also enjoy my privacy, so I don't rent it out every month, but the months that we do rent it out, it more than covers our mortgage payments, thus putting more money back in our pockets and effectively turning my primary mortgage into an asset. Now, once again, I want to reiterate that anything and everything can be a liability, and it can also be an asset, and any liability can be turned into an asset with the right mindset. It's not about what's good debt and what's bad debt, or what's an asset and what's a liability. It's all about money management and how you structure the way you spend money. As an example, if you net $1,000 a month and use that $1,000 to buy an asset like a rental property, and that property produces you $300 extra every month in positive cash flow income, you now have $1,300 a month because the mortgage that you put on that asset is already being paid by the tenant you have. Now, if you use the extra $300 that you received as income from your rental property to buy a liability, then it's not really a liability, it's just an expense because your asset is paying for the liability and it's not hurting your bottom line. Nowhere in there have we even dug into your $1,000 a month. You used your $1,000 a month to qualify for a rental property. You got a tenant in there, so you're not even paying the mortgage on it, so you still have your $1,000 a month. Then you used the extra $300 you received from that rental to pay for the new car bill that you just took on. Even though the car is a liability because it's just you driving it, it's being paid for by an asset. Therefore, it's not necessarily a liability, but just a regular expense. And at the end of the month, you still have your $1,000. This is how the wealthy manage their money. They use their income to buy assets and use the income provided from those assets to buy their liabilities. But I want to take it one step further. I want to start with your income, buy an asset, but then only use half of the extra income you've earned from the asset for your liabilities. In the same example, if you started with $1,000 and used that to qualify for a loan to get a rental property, and that rental gave you an extra $300 a month, I would only spend $150 of those $300 on a liability. The other $150 that I would get from the rental, I would put back into my income. That way your income grows over time and you could qualify for bigger and better assets. And the bigger and better assets you qualify for, the more monthly income you can get. So you see, it's almost like a circle. Income to asset, asset back to income, and so on and so forth until you grow your income until you reach financial freedom. Now, let me just tell you that, especially now with interest rates on a mortgage being so low, we're talking 2.5% to 2.75%, historically low interest rates. Right now is the easiest time to do that. But the biggest thing that stops people is the price of the properties because prices are skyrocketing, as well as fear. They're afraid to get started because what if they don't find a tenant? Well, as I explained earlier, there's always Airbnb. At the end of the day, if there's only one takeaway you get from this video, it's that anything can be an asset, and if you want to grow your wealth rapidly and leverage good debt, then you need to start now. Stop living in fear of the what ifs and just take the chance. Remember guys, I'm here for you as a completely free resource. If you have any questions regarding anything that we talked about today on how to turn a liability into an asset or what you should do in any given circumstance, feel free to reach out. I'd gladly help you. But until our next video, have a good one. Hey everybody, I just want to say thank you for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you got value from this video today, please like and subscribe because it really helps the algorithm in helping my channel grow. And if you want to take your personal finance to the next level, stay tuned because these videos talk all about that.